So, hello, this is the second part of Dream Your Nightmare. So let's begin, I guess. Part 2. When Stephen came downstairs, he found John, their father, happily preparing pancakes for breakfast in the kitchen. "Morning, Stephen," he said cheerfully. "Hi, Dad," replied Stephen, still appalled by his talk with Holly. He had many questions to ask. Why was it haunting her? Why did it even pick her? Why couldn't it haunt him instead of his little sister? John's smile immediately faded away as soon as he saw Stephen's face. There was a long pause of silence between them. "Hey, Steve?" John finally broke it. Stephen murmured a quiet reply. John paused with hesitation. He turned around and sat in front of Stephen. He gave him a serious look. "Can you tell me what happened up there? I heard Holly cry. Is she okay?" Steve looked up at him, his eyes full of terror. "It came to her again. This time I had to stay with her to calm her down," explained Steve dryly. John sighed. "This is seriously getting out of hand now. I think it's about time we take it to the doctors with this," he mumbled under his breath. Steve gave him an outraged, shocked look. "Take her to the doctors? Dad, she's 5. She's just a little kid. Of course she has a vivid imagination," he protested. "Huh? Go to the doctors? Why?" Holly yawned at the stairs, careful not to trip over the tall, definitely too wide for her small legs, edges as she climbed down. Stephen looked at her, surprised. "I thought you were asleep." "I wasn't able to fall asleep properly as, well, you know what happened," answered Holly with gloom. Steve sighed as he helped her up onto the chair next to him. "No wonder," he said quietly to himself. "Anyways, what's for breakfast?" Holly asked cheerfully. "Or pancakes, of course," John smiled at her. "Yay, pancakes!" squeaked Holly happily as John placed one of them onto her plate. As soon as he did, Holly rapidly started to gobble it up. "Slow down, Hol," Stephen laughed as she looked up at him with excitement, a corner of the pancake sticking out of her mouth. Yes, there was the 3 of them. Holly, Stephen, and John. And for 3 people at a table, you'd obviously need 3 chairs. But at the table, there was also a 4th chair. And no, this chair didn't just wait for a guest to arrive and be used once again. No, this chair was filled with deep memory and stained with the past, a stain that would never come off and be forgotten. It was empty and long abandoned by whoever that sat there once. Steve glanced at it from the corner of his eye. He remembered everything. The day that changed their lives forever. The car crash. He remembered standing there with Holly, watching as their mother, Sophia, was taken out of the metal, sharp, burning ruins of the car and placed onto a hospital bed. On that day, there was no explanation for his feelings. All of the grief, confusion, pain, and sorrow, all of it, everything, was mashed up into one big black slop. He wished Holly wasn't so much younger than him. Then at least she might have understood how it felt. But how possibly could she? She was only a toddler when it happened. The next thing he knew was sitting in the plain, colourless hospital waiting area, Holly right next to him, innocently kicking her tiny legs about and playing with her favourite Barbie doll, one of the only things they managed to save from the car crash. Then Holly would tug desperately for attention at his sleeve. "Steve?" He would continue to stare coldly at the wall in front of them. Yeah, huh? Where's Mummy? When is she going to come back? Holly would ask with worry. His lips would tremble as he would place her gently onto his lap and hug her tightly to his chest. Soon, I hope, he would whisper into her ear. Stephen watched as John appeared at the end of the hallway and walked up to him. Well? He asked, a note of hope rising in his voice. John sighed. She's very weak. They say she's not going to survive past a week. John answered plainly, his voice trembling viciously. Silence. Steve looked back at his sister, who was still playing with her doll, with concern. But Dad, what about Holly? He wondered with concern. What about her? John asked back. We have to tell her eventually, don't we? Said Steve with a serious look in his eye. John thought for a while. No, we don't, he announced eventually. Steve looked at him with surprise and anger. No? Dad, she's part of our family. She deserves to know, he protested. If we tell her, it will traumatize her, John hissed angrily through his teeth. Yes, but if we carry on with this and tell about this later on, then it will traumatize her even more to know that her mum is gone and her brother and father knew about it all along, Steve pointed out with frustration. John gave him a dirty look, shook his head at him, and walked up to Holly. I'm not arguing with you about this, Steve, said John stubbornly as he picked Holly up from the chair. But Dad, Steve started as he raced after his father outside and to the car. End it, Steve. John sharply cut him off with a snap as he strapped Holly in. Steve sighed and got into the car without a word. As they made their way home, Stephen felt Holly lean sleepily against his shoulder. Steve gently moved his arm out of her way and wrapped it around her. Daddy, she said dreamily, half asleep. Yes, sweetheart, John replied quietly. When is Mummy coming back? I miss her, she yawned. No answer. Stephen broke out of his thoughts as Holly placed the big, soft, pink bunny, her favourite teddy, that she went everywhere with, onto the empty chair. Just a little thing to say. So, my avatar thing, the pink bunny, that's her toy, basically. He's the mascot of the story. His name's Cotton. Anyway, Stephen, are you all right? Why aren't you eating? John asked with concern. Steve looked down at his plate. It was still full with the pancake. Holly looked up at him too. They were both watching him. Steve opened his mouth, ready to say something, but closed it back down, not knowing what. With silence, he immediately picked up the fork and knife and started slicing through his pancake. You were thinking about Mummy, weren't you? Holly bailed him out coldly. I'm fine, Holly. I was just thinking of when she was still here, that's all. Stephen tried to reply firmly, but his voice vibrated with emotion. Holly wrapped one of her small hands onto his hand. I know you miss her, Steve. I do too, she admitted quietly. Then she smiled at him, her eyes shining with hope. But don't worry, she's going to come back soon, she added with warmth. Right, Daddy? Holly turned to John. She's going to come back, isn't she? Steve and John exchanged their looks. John hesitated. Of course she is, sweetheart, he lied eventually with assurance. See? Even Daddy says so. Holly tried to comfort him with care. Look, Hol, I know Mum's been away for quite a while now, and I know things haven't been easy for the two of us because of that lately. But how about we go to the park for once, eh? Stephen tried to smile at her. Steve was very close to his mother. He has always been. When he was Holly's age, on the way home from school, he would think of nothing but her peachy perfume, the sweet, summer-scented peachy perfume that he would almost taste. Before he went to bed, she would delicately spread the large shield of Dove over him, The shield that he knew would black out all of the cold and replace it with bright light of warmth. Then, right before she left, she would gently kiss his forehead, place this symbol of everlasting safety on him. Yes, Stephen loved her very much. Holly too, even though she didn't get to spend as much time with her as Steve did. But the one who always seemed to love her the most was John. Sophia blinded him with love, and John would do anything to keep her delicate, fragile porcelain shape in place. It seemed like even a slight knock on her skin would be enough to break her. Her death didn't seem logical, and yet it affected them all whom she left behind in some way. Steve was angered more often, at himself, his mother for dying, and most of all for letting himself lie to Holly like that. He couldn't stand it. He couldn't hold the fire in him back from burning. The happy light in John's eyes differed. Sometimes he barely spoke, barely laughed, barely smiled. Other times he wouldn't make a sign of the once experienced joy at all. Ever since Sophia's death, Steve and John seemed to fight more than they used to. None of them wanted to go to the park where they once went. The beautiful family that once have been whole now seemed to slowly break, wither down day by day. If not for Holly thickening the stitches that held them all weakly in one place, her brother and father would likely follow their own paths. One more stretch on the fabric, and everything would fall apart. The stitches themselves seemed to be already screeching in pain, slowly tortured by the stretching within an inch of a second. Now her eyes lighted up with excitement. "Really?" she gasped with joy. "Sure, we can even have ice cream if you want," Stephen added with a shrug. Holly tightly wrapped her small hands around his torso. "Thanks, Steve," she jerked forcefully as an idea came to her head immediately. "I'll go and get ready," she happily announced as she jumped off the chair, tugging her bunny along during the jump. As soon as she got changed out of her pajamas and brushed her teeth, Holly was ready to go out with Steve. John sighed as he watched Holly pull at his sleeve impatiently through the window. He didn't know that only one of them would come back home. And that's the end of part 2. Later on I will go on to part 3. So thank you for watching. I guess please subscribe if you enjoyed. So thank you. Bye.